All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Darian Wilkinson with the Wilkinson Firm, and I want to thank you for showing up today. This is my beautiful and illustrious team. We have Allison Adams, our COO. We have Tanisha Coleman. She's a Tanasha Coleman. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with pronunciations, even though my name is a little crazy. She's our new VP of HR and Client Success. We have Anise Bradley, who is our Anise. What's your title? Jesus Christ.
I am the Vice President of Business Growth and Client Strategies.
Man, I
Glad to
love
be
the way
here.
you say that. And I love the way you live it, right? You're great. Been instrumental. You're out there in our Chicago area, which is one of the biggest cities in America, and you're single-handedly, lifting us up in that market every day. So thank you for everything you do. We have Mike Kipper, Chief Revenue Officer, Internal HR. He's our guru when it comes to data, statistics, payroll, benefits. You need anything, you need to know about it. You need to get the story and the cult, the juice, the nut of any story, and he will bring it to you delivered on a silver platter in a way that's digestible. So really appreciate him for that. Hi, Mike. On mute. Oh my goodness.
I'm a rookie. I'm a rookie. Look at this. I'm trying to just say good
No, you're
afternoon,
fine.
and I can't even do that. No, it's good to be here. How you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us. And then we have Jillian. She's our Shiro, right? The everyday VP sales and marketing, but every day she really puts us high on her priority list. We really can't thank her enough for even setting this up, right? She's the brain behind these webinar sessions, and really enjoy working with you. And it's been great. So, today's topic, we're going to talk about mental health, essentially, and why mental health staff need more than professional support, right? It's a very important topic. Generally, these types of talks are unscripted. For me, what I rely on is my contextual knowledge, my instinctual background, and a little bit of my charm and improvisation, to guide me through these. And with my teammates, friends, people that join these conversations, we hope to build upon and get momentum as we go with these. So if they start off a little bit more slowly, bear with us, but appreciate everyone who is either gonna tuning in now, will tune in, or if you're playing this back in your car, if you're looking on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. So, one of the things about mental health professionals and supporting them is that we talk about the people that heal need healing too, right? And that comes in the form of feeling empowered, being embraced, and feeling enabled every day in the workplace. Right? High visibility, high function roles, especially with direct care staff. If you're a qualified professional, if you're a licensed professional counselor, if you're a licensed clinical mental health uh, therapist, right? Whatever it is, what you do is appreciated, often underrated, and there's always more to give in that area from an employment perspective. Even if you're a solo practice or group practice, you get energy from the people around you, who you work with, who you lean on. And essentially, this conversation is geared toward different strategies, insights, practices, outcomes that all help us align under the guise and umbrella of how do we continue to be supportive. All right. I want to start off with, as I do a lot of recruiting in this space, one theme that I hear is that there's always this myth of being just professional enough, right? The therapist just got out of, you know, just finished their master's, right? Just got their first credential and certification under the belt. And what they want to do is make an impact. And they start out, bushy-tailed and bright-eyed. And what they always say is, we want to take care of people. I want to connect on a different level. I want to leverage my ethnic background, my inherent personality traits, and connect with people on that level, right? And they imagine a nice full caseload of people that look like them staring right back at them as they go forward in the world and put the curriculum in place to support, even from disability disorder or substance use, mental health or behavioral diagnosis. And oftentimes, what we find is the caseload, you don't get to always pick and choose. Even if you have a private practice, you don't get to choose who is available for healing at the time that you want to build these insurances and pay panels. That being said, you have to have a multifaceted approach to therapy, and young clinicians that are not exposed, and the older experienced clinicians they're different, right? You start out going one way, thinking things are going to matriculate in one particular area, but then you get into it, you dive into it, you get to the nuts and bolts of your work, and then you realize, wait, I have to actually be a subject matter expert, not only in my modalities and curriculum with the best practices on how to provide enhanced support. I actually have to make an impact in the lives and have them think of the strategies after we leave these 1 hour sessions and employ them and deploy them. So there's all types of different ways to impact. But what we find is that culture, character, these things really play a big part in how effective the treatment is going to be, right? So when it comes to a lot of clinicians just wanting to be professional enough, it really is a myth in the way that, you have to take care of yourself. You have to learn about other people. You cannot just become a one trick pony, so to speak, right? One experience, even if it's your favorite type of person, that you like to see. If you have a caseload of 10, I mean, four of them might be just like you, right? The other six, you have to work hard to channel your treatment procedures and curriculum and direct it in the energy towards that's going to allow them to take what you say at a holistic level and actually use that, you know, in their everyday lives. And that's something that it definitely is a challenge. I don't, when I interview these young clinicians, I always get a sense of wanting to make a difference and wanting to break free from the status quo. But then when I talk to older, experienced, more senior level clinicians, it's always, operating under the scope of what's allowed. I always found that to be a pretty gray area defined between the two types of experience levels, the two types of mental health professional, and essentially needing two types of support, right? Trauma stewardship is real, right? Where you can't carry everyone. I mean, you carry everyone else's story, but you don't know necessarily what to do with your own, right? You end up, with the younger clinicians, like I spoke on, wanting to make an impact culturally and lean into, where you found success from a personal relationship standpoint and some of your personal lives, your friendships that you've, started to lean into, like your favorite teacher. You start to think about your favorite friend and how you guys connect. You want to employ those same strategies. You want to text late night. You want to be available for a 12 a.m. Phone call, but that doesn't always work. For the senior clinician, especially, they start to remove the baggage as soon as the session is over, right? You can heap on them a lot of trauma and traumatic experiences, but they begin unpacking it almost as soon as they get it, and it's a learned behavior, right? So, and then we call that trauma stewardship, and that's bringing someone's trauma with you, making it a part of yourself, ingesting it. It gets through the skin, so to speak. And you gotta wear your armor a little bit. Your therapeutic armor is grown almost at the same track as your experience level, right? The more you do, the more you learn, the more layered your armor gets, and now stuff cannot permeate and penetrate your inner being. You're still strong at the end of a long, hard day filled with tough conversations. While younger clinicians find that it's harder to disconnect at the end of a long, trauma informed, trauma filled day. Therefore, we need to make them conscious and aware of what's happening. Explain it, right? Let's name it. From an HR standpoint, that's one thing we help them do is name what they're going through, right? We use words like compassion fatigue, clinical burnout, trauma stewardship to describe what they're going through, because if you can name it, what do therapists say? You can tame it, all right? So it's very important that we understand. And our firm really takes up close and personal viewpoint when it comes to the lives of the professionals that we place in high level roles, because we know their success is our success. And if we really want to impact them and have them impact their organization, and then have that organization impact, its community and largely the world, then it all starts with understanding the person. So that's, I once had a clinician text me from the parking lot. They were about to go in, they had secured the job essentially, right? But this was, I think, probably the second week, and she was sitting in her Mazda. Yeah, I remember it was yellow because that she had that on her screensaver, the yellow Mazda, 2010s, and she couldn't just walk in, right? She just could not walk in. It was something like she could not. Her seatbelt was undone. And she just, so we hopped on the phone and I found out it wasn't because she didn't love the work, right? But her nervous system just said nope, and it's not laziness, it was a warning, right? Her trigger signals, her alarm bells were just going off. And what her mind, was holding her back from was going into the fire, right? Beyond that door, when she stepped out of that car, when she closed that driver's side door on that yellow Mazda, she would then have to be faced with the traumas, the stories, the grief, the guilt, the passions or lack thereof, the relationships broken that she had to help people mend. And, I was able to talk with her. She got out of the car. She went and she had a day. I wouldn't call it a great day, but she had a day. But we were able to quickly identify what she was dealing with, help her understand it. And then from there, she was ultimately able to tame it. And we got through that day. She's still with the company now. She walks through that door probably, I mean, every single day, Monday through Friday, right? Sometimes on Saturday. So that's just, that's how not being supported, I guess, from a personal standpoint, leads to real challenges that often affect physical capabilities, right? We think everything is mental, everything is physiological, but no, there's beyond the psychology, there's actually debilitating physical effects, right? When you walk through the entryway of the door, you get sweaty, breath gets shallow, hands kind of clammy, right? When you're deciding what to wear in your closet, right? Are you, taken aback by having to pause and reflect on what you're going to face? You can only wear a blouse and pants, but essentially, a lot of times we wish that we actually had physical armor to go in with, right? That's what I hear from the mental health professional. So essentially, it's a real thing. So I just wanted to highlight those key ideas as we start this talk, right? That high performers actually in the mental behavioral health field, they hold pain until it boils over, right? And then trauma stewardship is a real thing, and they carry it around. And as HR professionals in this space, trying to build trauma informed HR policies and delivery from a system standpoint, we have to make sure we're constantly engaging in these conversations that allow us to harness what we know about them, feed it back to the organization and the person on a singular scale, and make sure that we're impacting at a high level. Now, when it comes to EAPs, does everybody know what an EAP is? What's the EAP? Tanasha, what's the EAP?
Employee assistance program.
What do they do?
From my experience, they normally it's a number or part of your benefits with your employer normally,
Hmm.
and it's a number that goes to mental health professionals,
Hmm. Hmm.
and normally you're allowed between 5 to 7 free initial phone calls to them,
Hmm.
and you can basically talk about anything at no
Yep.
charge to you. And then after that, I think you would, if you want to continue, you would have to set that up outside of the EAP program, I think. But yeah, it's a good way to get some things off your chest normally. Feel, in a safe environment, even
Yep.
though it is provided through your organization, but it is a safe environment, and get some feedback that you probably wouldn't be able to get from someone in your office. And, sometimes people can't afford it, so the EAP program would, is a true benefit to help someone if they need some professional guidance.
Yep, yep, yep. So in a nutshell, EAP is a counseling system, a toll-free number sometimes, but it's counselors for the counselors, right? And what I found and what we see is that the trend is a company installs the EAP and then they just send that document whenever something happens, right? They have a hard day that's filled with having to administer Narcan to save a life in their treatment program. At the end of the day, HR would reach out, send over that EAP number. Right? They had somebody die or learned of a death, from their active caseload, right? A patient, a member, a friend. And they're having a hard time grieving. Don't even know really where to start, how to unpack it. The company sends over that number, you know. And it's the counselors for the counselors, right? But man, it could be really cold. And yes, it is a good support system to start with. But many times using the EAP or telling a counselor that's looking for help and support to go to the EAP number, right? Go to it's almost like asking somebody to pull out their umbrella when they're in the middle of a hurricane, right? I mean, we have to move past the checkbox support strategy and get to a deeper level, right? I mean, you ever try calling the EAP and setting up appointment for 2 weeks, because before the end of the fiscal year because you haven't used it and you want to make sure you've used all your 5 to 7 calls. It's crazy. People need real life, targeted human support for people that understand the context about their lives, right? If I'm working somewhere and I'm having a hard time getting to that next level based on whatever I'm dealing with, the person that could best reach me and make me feel better is the person who knows me most, right? I want to talk to the person that understood. Like I talked to my guy Jerry. He knows last week my tire went out on my car. He understands that, I told him a little bit about my background with, my uncle, my aunt, and how contentious the relationship is. I'm fighting with my siblings, having a hard time with grades in school with my kids. So when something happens, I want to go back to Jerry. See, Jerry, if I was able to talk with somebody that understood all the contextual background about me, they would be able to not characterize me so quickly, give me a little, grace, right? With the understanding that, yes, I still made a mistake, or maybe I made a misstep, or maybe I'm grieving and you're helping me through it, but you're talking to me in a real way. I feel supported. Now, at the end of our conversation, I can take that and you know what? You're right. You're right. You understood my problems. You listened to me. You helped me strategize around it and use all the different complexities about my life as a case study. And you really took the time to listen. Essentially, it's we got to get away from the bowl of candy in the break room strategy. We got to. It's not a one size fits all thing. And what we do is we help companies see that, right? We help companies employ the one-to-one strategies that's going to be most effective. A lot of times these singular HR departments, they just can't. I mean, they literally just can't. It's not that they wouldn't, they just can't. If it's 30 to 1 or 40 to 1, how? Right? Even if it's 40 to 2, how? You have 40 lives, right? I mean, you have 40 complex relationships, intricate details to follow, to track, to care about. I mean, that's bigger than a mental and behavioral health caseload. I mean, so from an HR standpoint, it's unsustainable. And that's why, we're continuously coming in and augmenting existing HR departments, but also if we need to become a department for a group practice that's going to the next level, or doing a surge in hiring. One of the strategies is by hiring a larger firm with a bigger footprint. Somebody like us, we're able to have the conversations because we understand what it takes, where to start, and you don't have to build the tools and then start to deploy the tools and then start to make sure that the thing that you built with the tools actually works. We've already built the tools, we have the tools, we know it. So when we're coming in, we're getting right to work. Most burnout it doesn't come from the work, even from a trauma standpoint, it comes from the conditions around the work. And that's something that, we understand really well. Inconsistent leadership, punitive policies, those types of things affect people too, right? When you're talking about, okay, I wanna open up an agency to help. Well, let's look at the policies. Are they punitive in nature? Are you playing Monday morning quarterback with your people, meaning that they do a thing and then you put a policy that says that's no longer allowed and will never be done ever again? Because that's not the most thoughtful approach, right? I mean, me, I hate that. And hate is a strong word. I hate that. I hate when, you know, here's a story. I have a garage, and you guys know when that garage floor is smooth, it's almost like ice, right? I mean, you can walk on that thing so good. That cement floor is kind of polished, so it's not just, it's not ticky or tacky like your driveway. And you know, my kids would like to go roller skating, but it's so slick that they can go so fast. And then at the end of our driveway, it kind of steeps off into a hill, right? So we're like, hey, you can can go roller skating, but just be careful when you hit that garage because, you can slip and it's real, bust your kneecap, bust your head. But so we allow a thing up to a certain point, right? And then when a mistake or accident happens, it gets outlawed so quickly that it's almost like did you not consider that I would fall before you allowed me to roller skate in that garage? Because if so, why did you allow it? And then if you allowed it, and if it's because that you seen that there were some good things a part of that, why would you put a policy in place shortly thereafter that erases all the good reasons that you put forward the allowance to let this happen anyway, right? So now that type of reactive policy making in companies, especially in mental health field, where solopreneurs are taking it upon themselves to open up a practice, but maybe doesn't have the admin side or the business side of things down pat. What we see is that their reactive form of policy making, the consequential, like I said before, I call it the Monday morning quarterback, where after the game is all played, then you want to watch the film and tell me, oh, all the bad throws I made, right? But if we would have won, no problem, right? Everyone has an idea about it after the game is done, after the thing is done, after the skating has happened in the garage, after the mistake is made in the clinic. Everyone wants to put a policy in place then that outlaws whatever led to that. But there was a thinking in place that, prior to the accident or the mistake, that was sound in judgment as well. Just because an error was made on the back end doesn't mean that there was a fallacy in the thinking. You allowed that, Dad, as my kid could very much well say, because you thought we would be able to have great fun in this area with our roller skates. And because it was slick, we would be able to go faster and have an even better time. So don't take that away from us because we made a mistake. Let us learn from it, right? And let's do a thoughtful approach that maybe dials down some of the risk, right? Okay, I'll go slower. I'll buy knee pads. I'll get you helmets and elbow pads, right? And then have a first aid kit, right, on that wall in that garage. So if you go too fast, we'll protect against what could happen. But if something does happen, here's a way to approach it. And that's the same type of thinking that clinics, regardless of size, have to kind of have. And that does wonders for support from a mental health standpoint for the professionals that we expect to be at their best. It does wonders when they feel like the company isn't going to penalize any mistake that they make, put a policy in place and ultimately narrow the boundaries of what they can do. Of parenting gives a lot of the same nuances as restrictive employment, right? And with professionals. And you didn't like it when you were 7, you're not going to like it when you're 37, 27, 47. So we got to be cognizant of that, right? Allison, tell me a time where you put a policy in place or had to put guardrails in place after the fact, but then realize, you know what, maybe I am being a little bit reactive. Or if there has been a time that you felt that way.
I guess one thing that comes to mind, and I don't know that I would have done it differently, but it was about safety and security.
Mm,
And, the issue was serious.
mm,
And so it was one of those realizations that there was a gap manufacturing, there was a gap in all the protocols. And so when something happened, and it was a mindset of the person responsible for it saying, yeah, it's on my list, I'll get to it. He hadn't gotten to it, something happened. And thankfully nobody was hurt, but there was a potential that somebody could have been seriously injured. So
mm,
that dictated a policy needed to be put in place right away. It was reactive. It felt a little punitive and somewhat related to what happened. Everybody understood. But it was a reminder that, and something I was thinking about as you were talking, is companies take a lot of time talking about the things you shouldn't do, as opposed to taking time in advance to talk about expectations and what you should do and how success looks. And if that shift was made, I think it helps put everybody in the mindset of, I understand what I'm asked and expected to do, and I'm
mm-hmm,
going to achieve,
mm-hmm,
versus these are all the things I can't do, similar to, how your kids would feel or employees feel when things are, gosh, I get talked to a lot about all the don'ts.
mm,
And employee handbooks sometimes read that way. These are all the things you don't do. And that makes a difference in terms of how people feel valued and empowered and informed, and it changes the tone and the culture of a environment.
It does. It threatens to shift all the good work you've done. One wrong policy, one wrong procedure with that threatens to destroy all you've built, right? And life is just like companies, and companies reflect things similar to our inner workings of how we live, where you can do so much good, right? One wrong misstep threatens
Yeah.
it, right? So we always we don't have as HR professionals, we cannot afford to put a listless policy in place that is not specific to mental behavioral health, is not trauma informed, right? That is not thoughtful in the way we enact it and deliver it, the way it's framed, right? Reframing something makes all the difference at times, So, framework. Here we are, right? A good acronym for a framework around supporting mental health professionals. Write this down: CARE, CARE, all right? We call it connection, which is making a safe space to be honest without judgment. Acknowledgement, public recognition, not just praise in private, not just, candy under the desk, but on a large scale, grandiose, making them feel as if they accomplished something. Resources, tools, time, actual wellness budgets to be able to support the professionals in this space at a real level, making it a part of a culture. Even from a fiscal standpoint, investing in it, it's really important. And then finally, we have empowerment. Input on policy, caseload, and scheduling is going to lead to empowered professionals. And that care, right, from a holistic standpoint, those four prongs are going to make something that is akin to a place that people never want to leave. Right. If you're talking about healthcare, mental health care, behavioral health care, we have to be intentional about it. It's no mistake why the best companies retain people and some of the companies that are struggling with budgets and fiscal solvency don't. I like to make this joke. I say, hey, if your self-care day has to be requested 14 days in advance, approved by three people, made up of two extra sessions of meetings just to make sure that, listen, it's not a self-care day, it's not a mental health day, you just scheduled a breakdown day, right? And essentially we got to make it easy for people, and if we do it from the beginning with HR leading the process, human resources actually being a resource for the mental health professionals, the qualified professionals, the clinicians, the counselors that we wish to actually serve. What we find is that, hey, you can go further and faster. You're having trouble scaling, it's because you can't rely on your people. You can't rely on your people, it's because they can't rely on you. So ultimately, that's something that is really important, really underrated. And we take it seriously. I know we approach team camaraderie and compression or decompression from at the Wilkinson firm. We approach that really thoughtfully. Like we plan out all the different symptoms and outcomes, and we rate them. I mean, we manage the risk. We work hard to compartmentalize, the four corners of what could happen at the best, worst, and the worst, best, and the most likely and the less likely, and the what happens if people disengage? What happens if people draw back? What happens if people actually feel supported? Then what happens if people go to the next level in what we're putting them out to do? It's something that we teach clinics and business owners in this space to do, but ultimately we live it, right? Even internally, when we're talking about shifting things, moving things, how can we support? What multi-layer support levels can we put in place so that way we don't just do better this one time or the next time in reaction to a failed lack of support area that we've learned about? But what can we do systemically to make sure that no one ever feels this way again for the next year, the next 5 or 10 years, right? The next 5 to 7 months. And companies need to have that type of lens, when they're talking about dealing with their people, especially in this field. People wear so much. Mental health days, or people say they advocate for them, and on paper they will probably check mark that box as something that they see as being valuable, beneficial. But are you really willing to sacrifice a day of billing, a day of a regular work day, not the half of a Friday, Are you willing to sacrifice a Wednesday, a Thursday for a mental health day? A lot of times you'll find that companies find it really hard to justify it from a financial standpoint. And my response to those types of conversations are, hey, can you afford not to, right? Would you sacrifice one day if you could, without a shadow of a doubt, point to this 6 months later and said, you know what, we lost three clinicians, which our billing is 75% lower than it was 6 months ago. They were leaders, they were strong, things were rolling, things were great. And then we had a hard time approving some of the mental health days or policies around that in that same vein that would help them be able to work for us, right? You don't have time to check the oil, check your tires. That's perfectly fine. But when you're on the side of the road, it's too late to check. It's too late to check. Now you just have to buy a new engine. Now you just have to buy a new tire. And essentially, it's the same thing. Hey, you can't afford it? Okay. You will pay for it one way or another. You will pay for it. How much does it cost to onboard a new employee from a just at a basic standpoint, 5 to 7 up to $20,000 for executive and leadership roles, just onboarding. How much will it slow your traction down when you're talking about billing and authorizations, right? So, and yes, we can find the talent for you, and we can help you, help you keep them. But what we can't help you do is get around the fact of the sacrifice that's needed. That's something you have to be willing to measure, and you can't be scared to cut. We can't do it for you. So, the way we approach it, man, is just from a real standpoint. We like to be creative, but ultimately it all boils down to the same thing. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? That's where the conversation starts. If you can't give up time and or money investing into your people, it doesn't matter what types of different strategies from an HR standpoint we employ. The mental health professional will not feel as if they're being supported, and they're going to find a way out eventually. People leave areas that lack support. They just do. When they do, that's solely up to them, but they don't expect to build off of and scale off of that type of professional, the unsupported professional. You can't scale that. So we're at 12:41. We're about 20 minutes out. Um, let's open this up for some dialogue. Jillian, what's one moment where you felt seen at?
Goodness. I would say maybe one of my contributions that I do kind of quietly behind the scenes that am just kind of puttering around doing my job.
Mhm.
And then someone's like, oh, that really helped me, or that had an impact, or I noticed what you did. Um,
Mm.
I'm not saying like words of affirmation, but just kind of acknowledging that what I did had an impact on them.
And so how does that hit home for you? Is it like a smile and you know what? Does it energize you? Do you get you feel like even if you were getting lower energy, which you never run out of, but would that energize you and like kind of refill your meter a bit in cases like that?
It definitely would, and also just to reaffirm that I'm on the right path, that
Right.
I'm not continuing to drive 80 miles an hour down the wrong road.
Right, right. So reassurance,
Hmm.
acknowledgement, and affirmation and enablement, right? Are
Hmm.
those four words that you associate with that feeling?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing. Anise, what's one moment where you felt seen at work?
Most of the work that I've done, it has evolved around sales. And, during that process, it's so lengthy, it can be long, but it's actually seeing the results.
Mm,
And, it's being recognized not only by employer, but also the client.
mm,
And just being able to look back to say, hey, I had part
mm,
hand in making this happen. So it is basically being recognized for my work, and not just in a generalized meeting or employee meeting where a company may say or our leaders may say everybody's doing a great job, but that personalized recognition to say that's what you did and it's much appreciated.
yeah,
That's what sometimes we mostly definitely need to hear.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's the results of it and knowing that
Mm.
my work is actually working, and then being shown appreciation afterwards. So,
Yeah, and thanks for sharing. And that further highlights the point that, especially when it comes to mental health professionals that are seeing patients. I mean, don't you? We want to know our work matters, and we're not on the front lines of healing. Can you imagine somebody that's looking someone in their eyes and employing strategies to help them be a better person? Right? We want to continue, we want to see them change. And a lot of times they do. But what they don't get from the organization is something substantial enough that's congruent enough to match up with that. Sometimes the initiative doesn't match the impact, and we have to make it so. We have to make it right. We have to help clinics. We have to help business owners. We have to help supervisors see that. And we have to help drive change in that area. And that's really what's, I mean, I love that as a HR partner. I love being able to give them that scope. The conversations are not always easy, guys, right? I mean, we know that. You tell somebody, hey, you've been doing the thing, but it's not enough. Well, we're doing all we can, right? We're doing all we can with what we got. And they start employing all the defensive tactics to explain and justify why. And the truth of the matter is, you can't explain that to your staff that needs it. I'm not the person that needs it. We're not the people that need it. It's your staff, it's your people. So, yes, you're too busy. You didn't check the tires. You had to check the oil. I mean, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Now, when the tires pop, or the pressure is off, or when the engine is oil is low and it leads to overheating, can you explain that to your car? And so then people take that mechanical approach, and they have to care about it because they know they can't explain it to a car. So they take that extra approach and do the extra thing. Why don't we employ that same strategy with an animated, living, breathing representation of our business? Right? You don't do that with company cars. That's on a maintenance schedule. That's wrapped and painted, and you make sure that it stays clean even if it hasn't been driven. Right? The different care that we take, even for printers, computers. Think about how well we maintain our business laptop. We go the extra mile even when we don't have to. If something's wrong, you're running it to the shop that day. For your business phone, right? Your cell phone, your business work phone. If you couldn't hear somebody all day, you're not waiting. Oh, I'm gonna do it next. That's in the budget for next month. No, you do it now, right? And you always prioritize it. We need to treat our inanimate objects that allow us to do business the same way that if we treated the people, the animated objects that are at the forefront of our business with the same amount of fervor and prioritization, we probably would get, they will operate more efficiently than any machine that we can buy for our business, because those people are going to connect with other people and multiply. Cars, phones, laptops, they don't do that. They don't connect with other people. They're not walking billboards that thoughtfully present. They don't call their friend and say, hey girl, you just finished up your degree. You need to come on and work over here at this place. They treat people well. They do the recruiting for you. They tell people about it. They in the grocery store, and the people they've impacted notice them, and they say, "Yo, are you still over there at that one place?" Yes, I am. Come and see me. Phones don't do that. And it's something I'm really passionate about, something that as an organization I make sure that we stay passionate about. Once we lose sight of that and how we take care of people, honestly, we're no good to anybody if we're not doing that in the house, but also if we're not teaching others how to do that. And essentially, from an HR standpoint, what I hope to accomplish from this is the way that we impact the world is, as it pertains to the work that we do, is really important for me to have. Let me take a step back. When people are actually living and breathing and going to work for any organization, a lot of times the work that they do, especially from a healing standpoint, mental health, behavioral health, disabled, substance use, these programs, that actually becomes an embodiment of who they are. Right. So we talk about work, but to be honest with you, the people and who they are at work drives who they are in life, period. Because what they are to society at large, how they trade their labor for money that supports their family, there's almost nothing they're doing that's going to matter more, right? So to be able to impact people through what we do with strategies that get enacted, enabled, brought in, and pushed forward at work and through work from an HR standpoint, there's almost nothing more important. And we touch people beyond just where they work. They take this stuff home. A supported work life is a supported home life, right? How many times have you had a great day at work and then went home and yelled at people? That doesn't really happen, does it? It's always, I had a terrible day at work. I went home and I disengaged. I slammed that door shut. I hopped in the tub. I lit a candle. I didn't speak to anyone for 6 or 7 hours, right? What's your relationship like with your kids, with your spouse, with your family at home? Well, a lot of people could point to their day at work. And when it comes to mental health professionals, nothing's more true. That permeates throughout every area in their life, right? And so the strategies that we help to be supportive are something that is going to bleed through into the home lives of the people that we support, which then goes to impacting their family, right? We impact enough families, families make up a community. We impact enough communities, communities make up the world. And essentially, why I'm so passionate about this is because I understand that even if we're polishing a nugget, that nugget is a part of a whole that you can transfer back and say we're doing good work for the world itself, for society at large, and it matters just beyond the 9 to 5 hourly employee. And so my closing message, and then we'll just open it up for banter is, at the end of the day, we're not machines, right? We're not interventions. We're people, and people can't pour from empty cups, right? Especially when the cup was cracked by the system that trained them to be there. At the Wilkinson firm, we build systems that actually care for the people doing the care work. If you want to know what that looks like, to build HR around humans and not just handbooks, talk to us, reach out. We'll help it. We'll listen to your specific challenges. We'll get that point across, or help deliver the message that's going to spark the movement in you that allows you to take that back to your team and be different, right? Doesn't matter if the wilderness well is broken, you're trying to spin it, but the handle's gone. If you're stuck in the parking lot, on that phone, you can't seem to walk through that doorway. You can always give us a call. You can always reach out from an organizational standpoint. If you're a counselor that needs our support, not getting it from your business, we're happy to talk with you about what we can do to help feel more supported, even if we don't work with your organization actively. And that stuff we do at no charge, right? We're always here to help. The number one question that this company was founded on was, how can I help, right? Max from New Amsterdam, that's my guy. That's his favorite line at the end of each episode or somewhere within it. And it really resonates with me. So thank you for listening to this, for being a part of this week live series based around how we support mental health practitioners and the strategies therein. We'll continue these talks, these episodic launches, and make sure that the conversation continues to matriculate. Thank you. Now, thoughts, questions, suggestions, words of
Darian,
affirmation.
yeah, I would love to just reinforce points made by Jillian and Anise is leadership is not one size fits all. And it's important to get to know your team. Everybody needs something different. Support looks different to every person. And some people like to be called out and recognized. Other people don't. Some people do it just for the value of making a difference for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I underline that sentiment for, people that lead staff and therapists and clinicians. Get to know what is important for them. Is it some extra time off? Is it quiet time? Is it, support in doing some work? What is it? Sometimes there's visible signs, that people need something. You can see it on their face or in their body language or their tone.
Yep.
But everybody needs to be treated in a way that best aligns with them and what makes them tick and where they find value. And, so I think sometimes people as leaders intend to provide support, but they're giving people what they need, they themselves need versus what the
Mm.
team member needs. And there's a difference.
Mm.
So,
There's a difference. There's a difference. I mean, people only operate from the standpoint. If you don't know the people you're hoping to impact, all you have to rely on is what would make me happy, right?
mhm.
What would I like? And then you kind of go from there. Well, that might help out 25% of your workforce. Maybe 50 or 75% of people feel similarly to you. What happens? I mean, are you okay with the rest of the people dropping off because they didn't get the support, right? The answer is no, you're not. And you can't rely on guesswork to determine what works. You need to actually make informed decisions by getting to know the people who you hope to impact. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work for sure. And that's why HR is what it is. It's human resources, human relationships, right? Tanasha, what do you have to add about all of this?
That can you hear me?
We hear you great.
Okay. So basically, supporting whether it's mental health staff or any staff, the leadership, the organization needs to be able to put forth the true effort, show the employees what they want to do and how they can support them, and not just come up with all of these plans and develop a whole support system and never follow through.
Mm,
Following through is very, very important. And the staff that need the support, they want to make sure that they are considered human beings. And like you said, they're not machines. And
mm,
so being treated as a machine, working as a machine, and then not being heard is, or not being supported, that of course is going to cause burnout. It's going to make someone, want to leave an organization because there is no support there and they are
mhm,
burnt out and it's the fatigue there. They're just going, 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 and they're basically ingesting all of the trauma from other people that their clients, are putting on them. And they're ingesting that and they have no outlet for it. So their regular life on top of what the clients are bringing to them, that's very important for them to have an outlet, for them to be supported as well, in order to
mm,
be able to function, to be able to continue, to be able to still have something in them to take home.
mm.
So that makes a big difference, and that's very, very important to not only say it, but to do it and make sure that it's being felt.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Last words, Mike? Got anything?
Do I have to squeeze it in 2 minutes?
Take as much time
No,
as you need.
no. It's been good conversation, and I think one of the core themes is that support looks different in different ways, and whether it's the industry, whether it's the role, whether it's the person, it's all about supporting them in a meaningful way to them, for them, because that's what the intent is after all. Support is being there for someone, and they have different needs.
Yeah.
So I mean, from an HR standpoint, I mean, there's a litany of different ways to support, whether that's systematically with things as seemingly simple as scheduling, but I mean, that's a topic in of itself, and how that can be adjusted or maybe improved upon so that these have a more predictable work schedule, because
Mm,
like Tanasha said, they're not robots, they're humans. And so that's an aspect of support. Something we've talked about in the past is the concept of the buddy system, or peer support groups. Those are solutions. It doesn't have to be one person. So implementing a team-based approach,
yep.
that's certainly a solution as well. Some of the things that we've been talking about here today as well, the recognition, and there's platforms for that so that it can be done in even real time. Because if you've got to go over to this section of the office and write it down, I mean, a handwritten note is different, but if the only option to give kudos is through this kind of complicated process, well, you're going to almost decentivize people to sharing the feedback, the
Mm,
kudos to their teammates. So
mm.
there's many different ways, and there isn't a one size fits all approach. So that's the beauty of it. These types of things can be implemented really at any time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. So, in conclusion, really appreciate everyone's time. I think it was a really good talk. I hope that companies, professionals in this space find this information useful. If they'd like us to expound on any particular part of it, feel free to reach out. We're happy. Just to reiterate, the framework of care is connection, acknowledgement, resources, empowerment. And y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next week.